Hallo zusammen und herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Episode des Digital Download. Oops. Sorry, guys. Good afternoon, good morning, and good day, wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to a new edition of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. Now globally syndicated on TuneIn Radio through IBGR, the world's number one business talk, news, and strategy radio network. Today, we're exploring the world of remote work. We have a special guest, Shane Spraggs, to help us with the discussion. Shane is a strategic operations leader, productivity and remote work expert, and Forbes best-selling author. With over 25 years of experience transforming organizations through innovative operations and a relentless focus on productivity, Shane has a proven track record of creating high-performing teams and delivering results in complex, fast-paced environments, particularly in remote work landscapes. But before we bring Shane on, let's go around the set and introduce everyone. While we're doing that, why don't you in the audience reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us? We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience, so the audience participation is highly encouraged. Adam, would you kick us off, please?
Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Gray. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite. And I think that this is a really interesting topic. We saw such a huge shift in people's expectation of going into the office or working during COVID. And I think that since then, there's been a huge destabilization of the working environment. So hearing an expert talk about this rather than just people that have an opinion will be really enriching, I think.
And we're definitely looking forward to this. Tim, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, and welcome everybody. I'm looking forward to this as well. Just to introduce myself, I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm famous for writing the book Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers. I've read Shane's book. It's a great book. Just gonna The Power of Remote, and I'm really interested in digging into this because I think that the playbook has changed. The work playbook has changed.
It has, indeed, actually. And myself, Bertrand Godillot, I am the founder and managing partner of Odysseus & Co., a very proud DLA Ignite partner. As I said, this week on the Digital Download, we'll speak with Shane Spraggs. Shane's insight in developing scalable workflows, coaching leaders, and driving transformational change in remote and hybrid teams promise a show rich in actionable advice. Let's bring him on.
Hi, Shane.
Thank you for
Shane,
having
welcome.
me. Pleasure.
Good morning and welcome. Shane, let's start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what led you to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah, I started my first business in 1998. Ran for about 12 years, and it was one of those types of businesses where, learned on off the seat of my pants and had to go through everything myself and a few partners. And I ran there for 12 years, and from there I got an interest in project management. Joined Disney for a number of years. And worked with them, helped run the operations of a studio here in Canada. And from that point, I went on to a number of startups, and spent the last few years working with a company that was purely remote, and where I got my remote work chops. Wrote the book on remote work best practices, and now I'm back to consulting all on my own. I'm working with a couple other partners to help bring my experience to other small businesses. And as I like to say, we help businesses that are successful but stuck, those who are stuck at the plateau and trying to get through it. So, yeah, I've always been very interested in how people work and how people are more productive. I think I mentioned to Tim that when I was really young, my mom told me that I would walk through a grocery store and line up all the cans on the aisle It was just something that in my DNA is just to make things more productive, more organized. And I'm sure there's a name for that these days, but I've always just had a fascination for it. And what it's turned into these days is recognizing that we aren't hiring employees or staff or resources, we're hiring humans. And you need to understand how humans work to get the most out of them.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for that, Shane. So let's start with a foundational question. How can leaders effectively manage and motivate remote teams? Because it seems to be a big question.
Yeah, and it's always a little bit more complex than it sounds. We're so used to blogs and LinkedIn posts that all say, this one thing is what you need to do to do this, or to be successful. And really, when you start to learn all the ins and outs, it's a system. Everything has to rely on each other. But there's a couple of things that are more important than others, and one of the big ones for me is management. Managers have to understand how to delegate, how to follow up with tasks, how to work with people, and it's just not a common skill for companies to have good managers. And a good manager will allow a individual to be productive and work independent of the where they are working, and then the company has to be able to encourage that manager to run that way. But there's other aspects to it as well. There's how you organize your culture. Cultures have to be intentional. There's no such thing as a water cooler, as they say. And let's be honest, if you're the companies that run based on the water cooler are really leaving things to chance. It's all yes, it's organic. It's it's great for people to go off at noon and have conversations and discover new ways of doing things. But if a company wants to be successful these days, they have to have some control over their destiny. And I'm a big proponent on the word intentional. So everything has to be intentional. You have to have a plan for everything. It doesn't have to be overly planned out, but between that and management, those are some of the bigger things. And we'll probably get into relatedness in a moment as well. And that's how you have to build your connections internally with your team.
Because Shane, one of the things that I see is there's a lot of people that are saying we're going to have return to work orders. And the people that are saying this grew up in a world where, and I remember this when I grew up, which is that what would happen is that the man would go to work, the woman would stay at home and look after the children. And when the man went to work, he basically he was white, and he walked down to the train station and he got a train and he got into an office. Mm-hmm. And things happened in the office, and then he came home again. And that was the playbook that was related to me and to thousands and millions of people at that time. And then we have these people that are saying we now need to go back to the office, and they come from that time. Yeah. They come from the only thing work is, we had a senior leader, business leader who's a fantastic, influential and inspirational leader here, who's done a number of things with a number of companies and been very successful, saying that if you work from home, it's not real work. Now we've talked about working from home before. We do understand and realize that not everybody can work from home. If you're in construction, you can't work from home. If there's lots of jobs you could do where you can't work from home. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the people that can work from home. So how is it that, you kind of answered it there, but we went through a different paradigm, didn't we, during COVID, where we proved that we could work from home. So is it just about the actually we need to relearn? Do leadership need to actually start getting an understanding what leadership in a hybrid world is?
Well, so this is a multifaceted answer. The first is I don't think leaders of larger companies have ever listened to what makes their staff successful. And I recall my days back in Disney, and this is early on. And if you even go back further, this concept of these large buildings that people would work in the open office concept. That wasn't successful either. That was detrimental to productivity. But there's a certain element of what they are looking for when it comes to having people work at the office. They want control. And that's different. And I would hope that they'll, a lot of the people you have listening to this conversation, they're likely not in charge of large businesses, and you have the opportunity to influence them so that they can take what they've learned and do better for their staff and do better for their company, and allow them to get more out of their team, all the while creating an environment that helps them thrive as individuals as well. And so, you take a given company, and the larger it gets, the harder it is to control. And so this is really what the end game is. They're looking for ways to shortcuts in order to have a sense of organization and control over the business, without having it break into small individual silos that maybe push back on the company culture.
Because I have got a friend who's he's 40 this year, so he's not particularly old. He works for one of the big 5 banks, but he wants the people in the office so he can go. Steve's not. Where's Steve? Yeah. He's been longer than an hour for lunch. That's Steve. What are you doing? And he wants to have that control of say where are all the people.
Yeah, I think despite the return to office mandates, and the shift that's happened since maybe a couple of years ago, since COVID was over, I think we've turned that corner. I don't necessarily think that the remote work was the big evolution from COVID. What it really was, we changed technically how we work. We tend to have far more conversations over video now. Instead of using the phone or even email, we tend to do a lot of our conversations over chat, and the whole concept of working with people has changed. And it's more likely that even if you are in the office, you're working remotely with those individuals, your team. And certainly if you're working with a big organization, they don't call it remote work, they call it distributed work. And somehow that's different. You have team members all across the world, and lots of different time zones. That's even more complicated. And somehow that's a reasonable way of working with each other. But if you happen to take your office space and work from your house, there's a sense of entitlement there that you're not allowed to have. So I think it is a mind shift in a lot of ways. I think we've turned the corner from the purely in office. The days of faxes and printers are gone. The days of getting into boardrooms to have large conversations with people who are just entirely in your office are gone as well. And I think that this new way of working is slowly transitioning into a world where we're all digital. We all have flexibility around where we work, and some places will choose to have you work out of their office, and that would be a personal choice. I think the last study I saw from the Remote Work Institute said that out of 10 people, 5 of them actually want to work from home, and only 1 wants to work in the office full time, and the other 4 want some form of hybrid work. And those are individuals, not companies. So you're going to find, I think, as we grow, there will be companies that match that, right? If you're looking for a remote work job these days, good luck. It's they are going so fast, and we hear story after story of the best people leaving large companies because of the return to office mandates. So remote work is a power up for any company that's looking for people, right? They not only have access to a massive talent pool, not just because it's outside of their local area. If you can drive more than an hour outside of where their office is, you can now pick up people from all over the UK and other areas, and you also get access to quality people as well. And so it is a real boon for companies that want to take that cultural shift, and we're slowly leaving these other ones behind.
So why is that not the norm? So I remember 25 years ago, more than 25 years ago. I was working for an agency in London, and it was one of those environments where every now and again I would take a day off and work from home. And I used to feel incredibly guilty about doing that, because I would get up at the normal time, I would work, and by mid-morning, I'd have done everything. And it's like, and I would hunt around for things to do, because you're so much more productive when you haven't got stupid people coming and sitting on the edge of your desk wanting to chat about what you did, what you watched on TV last night, or what you did at the weekend, or whatever it may be. And I always thought, even at that point, 25 years ago, that there was a massive benefit for both me and the business by being that much more productive in that environment. So it strikes me that, you know, back to Tim's point about where's Steve, he's taken more than an hour for lunch kind of scenario. It strikes me that in many instances, a business wants to control what you do and what you achieve. Because surely in the modern world, you should have two forms of measuring somebody: the time you clock in and the time you clock out, and you're paid by the hour, or you're paid by results. And if you come in at 9 o'clock in the morning and you've achieved a massive sale by 9:30, well, take the rest of the week off because you've done your number for the week.
Right.
But that attitude, which actually, when you hire somebody, you should be buying their output, not their input. That attitude seems to be almost non-existent normally, doesn't it, in the business world? Why is that?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head right there. And the real issue is how does a company or an organization give you a list of things to accomplish and measure you on it, instead of just measuring your time? Measuring your time in the office is easy.
Yeah.
I can look at I can see you're at the desk. Measuring what you've accomplished requires there to be some good management who knows what needs to be done, can break it down for you and work with you to delegate it to you, and set some guidelines, and then follow up with you to make sure you're finished with it, and to capture the fact that that's been accomplished as a way of measuring your throughput. And that's really where it comes. It's you know, my firm opinion around why the return to office mandates are happening. Yes, there's lots of theories around, you know, office buildings are empty and it's going to cost money, and you know that people want to see, you know, people want organic conversations again. I believe it really comes down to management. Certainly these large businesses have some intelligent people working for them. They see the potential for the productivity increase, but the shift required to retrain all of their managers to not just know how this works, but to be good at it. You know, and management's been one of these things that has been underserved for years. We tend to take a really good employee. We know this whole story. Take a good employee, turn them into a bad manager, and we were doing that way before the pandemic, and it hasn't changed. In fact, it just got worse because we now have another layer that they have to learn. Now you have to be able to manage without being able to touch or see the people you're working with in the office. You can't gather them at a moment's notice because you didn't do a good enough job organizing the work that needed to be done. And so
part of the issue that we're managing the wrong things. So one of the issues that we see when we talk to, we work a lot in sales departments, and one of the issues that we see in sales departments is that you are KPI'd, or part of your KPI program is around doing activities that are no longer relevant in the way that they once were. So this might be cold calling people, dialing people up on the chance that you can sell them something. So as an employee that's working in that environment, if I spend all of my time cold calling people, I'm not going to make my number. So Tim, my boss, is going to be saying, you haven't sold enough stuff this month. And I'll say, but I've done all of these calls. And he says, I don't care. You haven't sold enough stuff. Conversely, if I am selling enough stuff, he'll phone me up and say, how many calls have you made? I said, well, what does it matter? I've sold 200% of my number. Yeah, but I've told you need to make 100 calls a week. So actually, you're in this situation with, as they say, the cleft stick. You know, either end can beat you to death. And the challenge is that so often we have that kind of, we work with a guy that used to refer to it as his Victorian mill owner, you know, who would wear the old top hat. and would talk about all of these old things that had to happen, even though they're completely irrelevant today. We're stuck in that, aren't we?
Well, I think we're stuck there for some organizations. I think, like I said, there's been a cultural shift in certainly entrepreneurs. So if we give it 20 years, and over that 20 years, you imagine people are starting new businesses, it makes zero sense for someone who is bootstrapping a company to say, I'm going to spend $5,000 to $6,000 a month or pounds to open an office. And it's just a simple
decision that we made.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and what's going to happen is you maybe, if you're successful, you're going to start, hiring people, and because you have no office, you're not going to be restricted to that hour, circumference around somewhere. And you're going to, even in UK, you could, there's tons of people you could hire that will be, it's impossible for them to drive to the office on a daily basis. So you'll start to grow your business even regionally in a way that's not suitable for an office. And my firm belief is that the next Google and Amazon are being created right now in someone's basement, and we'll see that shift. But I also think there's always going to be a component of businesses that are going to be in the office for people who want to work in the office. And so hopefully employees of the future, depending on where AI goes, will have some choice. And along with choosing the industry you want to work with and the type of role you want to have, you'll also have a sense of, hey, I'm an in-office person, or a remote work type person, or a hybrid.
So I'd like Shane to bring a specific topic on the table, because yes, indeed, I even experienced that 25 years ago, almost 30 years ago, when we started a business in France, actually entirely remote. The point is I think maybe there is an area which it's already not hardly very well covered, which is onboarding. And the question is really about is there a best practice, a good way to do onboarding remotely? Because
Absolutely,
my experience is, it's probably one of the most tricky part.
Yeah, and like all activities, I often remind people that people do a bad job of this in the office as well. We've all heard stories where you get your first day involves walking into a room that has a box in it, and that's your desk you have to build. Or you have to find somebody to tell you where the bathroom is. And I'm a firm believer that a good onboarding plan for remote work will be as equally valuable in the office. And it's simply a matter of sitting down. I like to plan out the whole first week of an individual, including when their lunches are, so they know when to stop and go take lunch. But on that onboarding plan, outline who they have to meet and why, and what activities they're going to do. And if the company's a bit more mature, you may have some pre-made activities that they can do, so that they can work on understanding the business while you're doing other things, and you don't have to hold their hand the whole time. But it's a very simple system. You sit down on the first day and you share this onboarding plan with them. It's like, hey, let's decide what you're going to accomplish in this first week. Here, at the end of this first week, you sit down with them again and say, okay, let's talk about what you're going to accomplish next week. You give them some control over that and say, hey, what do you think you're going to accomplish? You do that for the first 4 weeks, and then after the first month, you've got a month done. You do that again for the next month, the following month. Before you know it, you have 3 months worth of follow up with the individual, and you have now the makings of a performance plan for the next 3 months. So it is a simple matter. If you're onboarding somebody, sit down, ask the question, what is everything they need to know? Put it in a very short list. Don't put too much detail into it. Just list it on a bullet point, and that becomes your agenda for the first meeting. Like, hey, John, thanks for joining the company. Here are all the things we're going to learn over the next little while, and I'm going to introduce you to these individuals, and make sure you're off to a good start. And it's the same thing that would work well in a office environment.
Okay, good. So maybe no, not trying to run in circles here, but what do you think are the biggest misconceptions about remote work?
Yes, the biggest that's a good one. I haven't that one for a bit. Let me see here.
I'll give you while you think about it. I'll give you an example.
Sure.
When I did that 30 years ago, all of my friends who were actually on site were saying, "Well, it's pretty cool for you, right? So it's so because you work from home, so basically you could, it's you do whatever you want, and maybe you're actually less working. You're working less than anybody else." Well, the reality for me was that I was actually working far more than anybody else, to the point where I had to put an out switch on my desk just to call it a day. So I'm sure there are plenty of these, and I was just trying to understand, from your perspective and as a consultant, what do you see into your with your customers?
Well, taking it from the perspective of somebody who works in the office and believes that office work is important, I think the misconception is likely that people who work at home don't care, that they have no dedication to the business because they can just do what they want at home, and no one's keeping track of their productivity, and they're just they're having a piss, as they would say,
taking
in the UK, of the business, and they're just getting away with it, right? So that would be, I think, that if you aren't a remote worker and you're a firm believer of the that you should be working in the office, your misconception is simply that people who are working from home are lazy.
Mm-hmm.
When it's really the opposite is true.
But isn't there kind of a? I mean, if we take demographics of people and say, okay, so my partner's eldest son is he's 30 this year. He likes going to the office because he likes going for beers after. He likes the sociability about it, and he also wants to be in the fact that he's actually talking to people, because he thinks if he's not in the office, that impacts that he won't get a promotion. Whereas there's also people that who are probably younger than him that could have young children. There could be people like myself and Adam and my partner who have elderly parents who sometimes all of a sudden we need to do something. So what I'm just saying is that there's not just one group, but all the way through different ages, there is a reason why we might find working from home or working from home sometime actually useful. But also we want to be in the office, or some people would want to be in the office. So there isn't a cookie cutter, because everything you read, there's a cookie cutter. This is hybrid work, but actually everybody's different.
And that's exactly right. And we are so used to having, like I said earlier, that blog that says this is the one thing that, but in reality, it's quite the spectrum. And I was surprised to learn that the majority of remote workers are in their later stages of work. 35 to 45 is where the majority of remote workers are. And this is largely for me, it's largely because they already know how to work. There's some unspoken rules you have to learn to be a good employee that you tend to only learn through work and at the office. And I do advocate, if you are a young employee who are just getting into the workforce out of university or college, spend the next 5 years at an office, because you'll learn stuff there that gives you the right mindset for working remotely. That it's tough to learn when you're on your own and disenfranchised from the rest of the work. By the time you get to your late 30s, you're less interested in building social connections and more interested in being productive. And it's just I think you said, it's just a different mindset.
So as we have a lot of leaders that listen to this. So if that's the case, and we're finding that all of our employees have all of these different attributes, what can leaders do to basically, because we want to employ people right across the spectrum, because we want to have people that can contribute who are maybe older than 30, but we also want to make sure that we have a succession plan of people that are coming are growing up and is going to take those people's places.
Well, I still believe that people who are in late 30s have a lot of career left in them, and even
Yeah.
if you are only hiring people at 35 and older, they still have lots of time to have succession plans into your business. But I would suggest that rather than business owners should start with an understanding of what kind of business they want to run, and the type of people they want to hire. There's lots of diversity in the role, and then just if they're going to be hiring younger individuals who have less experience, put more effort around them. Have better training for your managers so that those managers know how to keep them informed and give them a bit more mentoring than normal. So remote work companies do benefit from having more official mentors, and as a business owner, you can establish those relationships within your company, and that can be very productive, very helpful for the people who are working there. So lean into mentoring.
When you say mentoring, that's also about having things like buddies and
so a good mentor will take an interest in your career, and
right.
So the main difference between a coach and a mentor, from my standpoint, the coach will help you through a task, right, and help you understand the work and get you from point A to point B from a task person. A buddy for onboarding buddies. We talked, Bertrand, about onboarding. Assigning somebody an onboarding buddy is also critical, and that buddy role is a connection to the social side of the business, which is entirely possible with remote work. There's nothing saying you can't have a social relationship with the people you're working with. It's just a little bit more professional. And then a good mentor will take an interest in you as an individual and help you through some difficult decisions, or help you see opportunities that maybe you haven't seen. And there, in a business, if you have a large enough organization, say 100 plus, getting having somebody who's not in your department mentor you is both good for you and good for them as well. It's very educational to be a mentor. You can learn a lot from it.
So you said initially that this to be successful, basically you need a system. So you talked about management, and you basically said that there was a lack of investment in that area, and you talked about culture. So I'd like to bring the topic a little bit on culture. What are the things that you can do to actually cultivate that culture of remote work?
Yeah, for me, there's three different keywords that work, and we've talked about one of them. One is intentional. Being intentional about all the things that need to be done at your business is very important. For me, culture is the combined habits of the organization, and being intentional about it means not just putting together standard operating procedures. It's making sure that people read them and follow them and build habits around them. The next is transparency. The more transparent you can be, the easier it is for people to find information, and easier for people to understand things like the purpose of the business, the values of the organization, and a remote business has to do better at communicating those values and that vision to their team. Unlike, I'm sure we've all experienced this, where you join a company in brick and mortar. They tell you what their mission statement is on the first day, and you never hear it again. It's just for whatever reason, that was something we did, and I don't know who's using these, but you just never hear it. But you need to do better at with both your values and your mission statement, to repeat them on a regular basis. And values can be very important for your culture. If a good value will help your team members make decisions. So your company, anyone working, your employees can make a decision when you're not there around the values the business has. And the last big one, and I've touched on it a little bit, is relatedness, and understanding how to build relatedness and how that fits in. And so I discovered a couple of years ago the workings of Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, and these are two individuals who in the 80s established the self-determination theory. And that talks about what motivates individuals. And prior to that time, motivation was looked at as extrinsic, and meaning that it was applied to you. It was a carrot and stick sort of situation. And they posited that motivation was largely intrinsic and was built up by three main pieces: autonomy, how much control do you have over the work, and how much do you benefit from it. Next one is competency, how qualified you are for that work. If you're underqualified, it's going to be a struggle or stressful. If you're overqualified, it's going to be boring and not interesting. You need to find that Goldilocks zone. And the last was relatedness, which is a bit nebulous, but relatedness is I like to look at it as one step before friendship and above small talk, right? So we're having some conversation today that's a little bit more than small talk, and because of that, we're gonna form a sense of relatedness. And relatedness is the foundation of trust. Between combination of doing what having a strong connection with somebody, and their belief that you will get things done through, and if you demonstrate to them that you can get things done, and you follow through on your commitments, that builds trust. And relatedness is one of those things. If you take a step back and look at a lot of the online communities, I like to talk about. I don't play it, but Call of Duty comes to mind. The online games, they have fantastic teams of people who never meet each other in person. And every once in a while, you'll see these news stories of people who've been playing online games for years, and they finally get together in person, and they have the closest relationship. And this is because you don't necessarily have to be in person to form the connections you need to be successful. And there's the Wharton School of Neuroscience came up with this. They did a study that says, they basically came up with this great sentence that says, brains that fire together wire together. So people who work together and accomplish things together tend to form this level of relatedness. You extrapolate that, you're now removing social from the business, which is fine. Social is, in person builds relatedness, but it's not required for business. And in fact, when you remove it from your business, you have a lot less drama, a lot less conflict. And in my experience, remote work businesses just get stuff done. They don't get hung up on office politics or who microwaved fish in the microwave. That those sort of issues don't become a problem. And so then those remote workers can go and get their social fix outside of the office with the people they want to be with. So those are three things. Make sure you have intentionality with everything, all the processes and systems and habits you have formed in the business, and that includes right up to the top from the values you have and the purpose of the business. Be transparent with everything. Make as best as you can. I know there's always some things you don't want to share, but if you write it down to your compensation structure, if you know that, hey, you're a level 2 office manager and you're going to be in this bandwidth, that's healthy for people. It takes away a level of stress that worrying about what Bertrand's making versus Adam versus Tim. How come you guys are all making different amounts of money? I'm equal to you. I should be making that. It removes all that. And finally, the last one is relatedness, and understanding how relatedness works and managing it is a key component to remote work. So
we have a great comment, so I'll bring it up from Robert in the audience that say think brainstorming with breakout rooms is still better in person with whiteboards and post-it notes than any technology virtual solution. And I love tech.
Yeah.
So it's not a laggard, basically. It's just
yeah, I know Robert, and I agree with him. Which is, it's a great comment. Which is, I'm the CEO of a remote business, but if I had the opportunity, I would get everybody. If you want to do some brainstorming, and we have done that, we got everybody together in either a hotel or a room. There's something fun about pushing people out the way so they can't put their sticky up on that. That's a joke,
Yeah.
And because that's part of the fun of it, as part of the brainstorm.
Yeah, I'm the same mindset. It's absolutely valuable to get people together in person for a brainstorming activity, but you're just not doing that all the time. I've got a buddy who works for a large game company. They make online games, mobile games, and they're, I think, about 500 plus people. They are taking the entire company to Portugal for a
Nice.
week, right? They're not spending any money on offices, so it's perfectly reasonable for them to fly everyone to a country and get together in person for a week, and doing that on a yearly basis, and having some, or even getting people together on a periodic basis to do some brainstorming is perfectly reasonable. And it's probably the one thing that, that yes, it might be in the con column as opposed to one of the pros, but it can be turned around to be one of the pros, because you invest in it, and I also, building on that, I remind people that just because you don't have an office doesn't necessarily mean you have to save all that money. You take the money you're saving, you put it towards education and learning development and getting people together in person occasionally, because that fast tracks the building of relatedness, and it makes for these conversations that are fantastic. And the brainstorming ones, that I'm a big sticky note lover. I got piles of sticky notes, and that's one of the things I miss.
My partner works for a big company, and they're very much of the even they have remote work. They're very much of the, it's all about the meeting around the water cooler. But when she goes into the office, she's on Teams calls, and then she actually had, and it's like a library. Nobody talks to each other, and it's like quiet. And she actually had an intern. They've got these, the thing nowadays, you've got social tables where people sit there. And this intern sat next to her and she said, whispered, "Is it okay if I talk to you?" and it's like, and this goes back to what you're saying about working in the office and actually understanding what working in the office means. And my partner said, "Yeah, of course, tell me, what do you do? And can I help you?" And and had a proper conversation with the person. But they had no idea how to work in the office, and they're not getting the full benefit because of the fact that actually no one says anything.
Yeah, and to that point, there's remote work has decreased the numbers. Most businesses these days, especially the smaller ones, are hybrid. They back when the pandemic started, they already had people working for the office who were within that 1 hour or 1.5 hour circumference around the building, and so they already had houses that were nearby. And now there's been some return to the office from 1 or 2 days a week, but they're doing it wrong. They're not planning out, and people are showing up to an empty office out of mandate from the company. You got to work one day in the office, but they don't talk about which one, and people aren't putting the effort into what to do with that time to make it more valuable. And it really all comes back down to that if you run a business, there's a certain amount of responsibility you have to understand how it works.
Yeah, I also talking to someone last week, and they live just outside of London, so they have to get the train in, and in summary, what she said is that you can never get a car parking space on Tuesday and Wednesday at this train station, because everybody goes to the office on Tuesday and Wednesday. Nobody goes to the office Monday, Thursday, and Friday. Everybody. So there's this. So it's not exactly hybrid work. It's just that everybody goes on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's the Wednesday problem, as they say. That if you do have a hybrid setup, you tend to get the people tend to go,
because most people have now shrunk the offices, because the assumption, a mate of mine was it shrunk the offices down to, what was it, like 50% of what they needed. And now what happens is 100% of people go in on Tuesday and Wednesday, and they've got 50% of the desks.
Yeah, it does take some time to really understand how your office runs, and how it's going to work for your people, and be intentional around it. Again, that's the intentional thing. And we've for so many years got away with letting it happen on its own and being lucky in some cases. But back to your point earlier about brainstorming, the other thing that is hopefully people have learned as well through, if you're going to bring remote work people into a common area for in-person brainstorming, make the best of it, and and do some pre-work. And this is one of the things we talk about. We Vertira ran a really interesting study a couple of years in a row. They ran a study in 2021 and then again in 2023 on it was originally supposed to be on Zoom burnout, and it ended up being on meeting burnout. And the fact that one of the challenges with remote work, if you don't know how to do it well, people tend to replace the social interactions with meetings, and they don't. You end up with your day full of meetings, and you end up sitting there from 8 o'clock in the morning to 2 or 3 in the afternoon without a break.
Yeah.
And this is one of the downsides of remote work if it's not managed well. And the difference between a remote meeting versus in-person meeting is in person you stand up and leave and go to a different room, and that little micro break you get is very important for your mind and for your body. From a mental standpoint, it helps you remember things, and you just don't get that remotely. So the one of the things we advocate is doing upfront work for meetings. And so if you're going to run a meeting, ask the question, what are we trying to accomplish here, and what work can be done upfront to make it a little more productive? And it can really supercharge your meetings if you put it and think about it in that respect.
Yeah, I when I was in corporate, I used to do quite a lot of work with, funnily enough, social media, internal social media. And one of the things that we started doing was actually running work, upfront work on social media. We create in the equivalent of Slack, a Slack team for people and actually have the discussion. And what we found is that we could reduce meeting time by 50%.
Yeah.
Because, and in fact, sometimes we actually didn't need to have a meeting because it was all basically agreed. Well, actually, the answer is this. Well, let's just go and do it.
Yeah, and another recent innovation, and maybe not so recent for some people, but with the advent of TikTok and Instagram, with people being more comfortable talking to themselves, talking to the camera, we're seeing more and more people using asynchronous communication. You record a minute or 5-minute video and you send that off instead of typing in a text message. And not only does it save you a ton of time because you can speak more fluidly and less perfectly than you would type. It conveys your emotion along the and your intent in tone and your intention along the way, and it does a much better job of. And sometimes you can even show people what you're pointing at. And so I'm a big proponent of this asynchronous voice memos or video memos, because they do a lot of heavy lifting, and a 2-minute video memo can remove and reduce a 30-minute meeting to let's get together and talk it through. Okay, here's a video of what I'm talking about. Oh, I understand that now. Thank you. And let's go about my day. And that's
we had one of our clients actually did that. They got all the so Catherine Cole at Telstra basically did got all the sales team to at the end of the week. It was a 1-minute video, and part of it was trying to get the sales team to get used to doing videos so they could put it on social media. But the other reason was just to summarize and boil down what you've done this week, highlights, lowlights, and send it to me in a minute video, no more than a minute.
Yeah, absolutely, fantastic tool. And it used to be the domain of companies that had lots of time zones involved. So you get your you do your daily stand up. Everyone would do 5 minutes or a minute video from all over the world, and then they would all show up in one Slack channel. But now and more they can be used to convey more information, and it's that tone and intonation of your voice that really matters.
So here's a left field question. I love the idea of working from home. Tim and I have been doing it since we started the business. We were doing it before we started the business. But is it a good thing? Certainly I've got 2, well, they're adults now, but kids. The concept for them of working remotely is terrifying. So they're both in kind of group environments. And I wonder whether or not, despite the fact I love it, I love the freedom it gives me, I love the productivity it gives me, is it actually a good thing?
I have to answer yes. Simply, there are so many elements that on the whole, if you from certainly being able to give people a lot of their life back. They're saving people upwards of an hour and a half on average a day of commuting that isn't paid, and this takes. I can't imagine adding an extra hour and a half to my day right now, missing that from my family. And so I think it's good from a human standpoint for the individuals who are doing it. I also believe it's a good thing for the businesses if they manage it well. They'll get more out of their people. It creates more committed individuals. There's less turnover in remote businesses because people aren't suffering those same issues that they have in the office, and they tend to be more committed, and they save money along the way as well. So I think there's so many positives that come out of this. And again, I'll be the first to admit I'm not evangelizing it for everybody. There are people out there who are more productive and more comfortable in an office setting.
So Adam and I sometimes, we decided very early on not to have an office because of the cost, and it costs Adam £100 a day to basically come into London.
Wow, yeah.
And so Adam's a member of the Royal
Society of Arts.
And we meet there if we need to meet anywhere. So it's about having this third place, which is something we don't often talk about in hybrid, and having that rather than having an office, there's a place where we can go to, where we know we can sit down, we can get a coffee, and we know that there's a table and there's sockets and stuff like that. And that third place, I think, is not often talked about enough, isn't it?
Absolutely. And and this is the thing. It's for you, it works because of your setup, right? And so a lot of remote businesses. My remote business right now is with a couple of individuals who live in town with me. We're all about 10 minutes drive from each other. We get the benefit of not having an office. We don't pay for an office, and we can go together and spend time when necessary. In fact, we have an event planned next Tuesday. We've called Casual Tuesday networking events. We've specifically set up because we want to get people together in person again. And we go to a local pub. We've invited, and it's been very successful. We have over 100 people signed up for this week, and that's because we don't necessarily always get the connections we need from the people we are working with. We can get them from outside the office.
So Charles JD Tusi makes a really good comment, which he says, conversely, I think working in the office is terrifying for some young people, but there is such an opportunity for learning by osmosis in the office environment that I would not recommend pure remote working for everyone. Great comment. Thank you, Charles.
And we agree with that.
Yeah.
Shane, thank you so much. This has been great. Where can people learn more? Where can we find you?
Well, two places. You can get the book. I'll put my plug out there for it on Amazon. It's also available on Spotify. If you have a Spotify account, or Audible, we have a audiobook version of it. But I'm also the only,
because this goes out on radio. I need to so people can't necessarily hear or see me putting this up. So Shane's book is The Power of Remote: Building High-Performing Organizations That Thrive in the Virtual Workplace, and it's published by Forbes.
Thanks so much. Yeah, absolutely. And the other place is I'm the only Shane Spraggs on LinkedIn, so please reach out to me and connect. I'm always open for a conversation.
Excellent. Thank you for that. We now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get the show highlights, beyond the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You can scan the QR code on screen or visit us at digitaldownload.live/newsletter. On behalf of the panelists, to our guest Shane, and to our audience, thank you all, and see you next time.
Thanks, Shane. That was excellent. Thank you.